Right. What is threat means? Okay, what is
Damage.
biodiversity means? Okay,
Biodiversity
sorry to
living.
obstruct. Chapna,
Biodiversity means living.
right, living, all the living beings, right? All the living beings, whether it could be a microorganism or a big macroorganism, or a plant or a herb, or a shrub or a tree or a human being or animal, cattle, deer, dog, tiger, donkey, snake, reptile, amphibian, fish, everything, any kind of material where life is available is called as a part of biodiversity. Then what is a threat to biodiversity?
Means it may cause any damage or
Damage. What kind of damage?
it will decrease that thing.
Right, it will decrease in the population. Damage means decrease in the population of a living being. Right, that is the biggest problem. Sure, for all the living beings, it is the same case. No, for one living being, the case is different. Like we want that living being's population to be controlled. What is that living being called? Come on, you can tell about yourself.
Sir, can you
Human
repeat the
being.
question?
Acha, you want me to repeat the question? All the living beings, we want to control their death rate and increase their population, except one living being where population has to be controlled. Case is reverse. What is that? I said.
Yes, sir, human beings.
Ourselves, right? We
Yes,
want ourselves to be controlled population because it is growing very fast and uncontrolled, abrupt, right? So, except human beings, for all other, not all, I can say, maybe all. Why? Because there may be some living being, like I can say, recently. Recently means nearly 5 years before I read a journal in a scientific journal, read a column there, a paper published regarding the increased number of cattle. Cattle are increasing, and if the cattle increases, the waste material of the cattle will start anaerobically digesting, and that can lead to the production of methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas. So even the cattle population has to be controlled. It should be in the control. So that was another paper. I mean, I read. So that is very deep into the subject if we get into, right? So other than that, only except human beings, no other population has to be controlled that much. What human population has to be done. So what is the threat ultimately? Loss or decrease in the population of biodiversity is the threat. Now, deforestation, loss of vegetation. What are the factors which can cause loss or decrease in the population of biodiversity is deforestation, loss of vegetation, habitat conversion and destruction, then overexploitation of resources and overexploitation of species, pollution like plastic, pesticide, toxic chemicals, which can lead to the effects called global warming, climate change, acid rain, ozone layer depletion, and that's how they causes the abnormality of the number of living beings. The trophic levels will get disturbed, which will lead to the ecological imbalance, and that will again will have the total population decrease, right? And not only this, we have still some more issues like poaching and illegal trade of animals, and then human-wild conflicts, technology war, accidents, and encroachment of the forest land areas. All these are nothing but threats to biodiversity. Next is endangered and endemic species. Okay, what happens if these living beings are being continuously killed? Their number is decreasing, their population is decreasing. Where that will end, or where it will lead us? What happens if a particular group of living beings, like species population, is gradually decreasing, continuously occurring in the same way? There is no stop of that curve, the decline curve. What will happen? After some time, can we find the same living being again after?
No, sir.
Once they are totally lost, what we call that if a living being is totally lost from the environment? The word in the particular word.
Endangered.
No, 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 no. You are giving me answer instead of giving me that word. That endangered ante the endanger ki mundu, when the population is decreasing continuously and it completely lost a living being, it is not called endanger, it is called as extinction. What does extinction mean? Extinction అంటే ఏంటి చెప్పండి అన్న.
Total loss of the breed.
Right, total loss of a living being, permanently lost. No live DNA of such that living being available in the environment is called as total loss or extinction. Right. So before extinction, what is the stage the population is decreasing? Right. We identify that okay, this particular living being population is decreasing, and if we don't concentrate on that, it may get extinct. So what you name that? You can't just say that this population is decreasing, its population is decreasing. We use a word called as somebody. Gave that answer just now. Endangered అన్నారు కదా అదే word. So endangered. What does endangered means? The living being whose population is gradually decreasing is called as endangered species. Right? Who is at the risk of extinction. It may get extinct if we don't take care of that living being. Is called as endangered living being. Right? So what is that? It is endangered living being. Right? Endangered entity whose population is gradually decreasing. And we have a list of endangered species in our country like Asiatic lion, Bengal tiger, very bad. I should say people should feel shy to say that Royal Bengal tiger, our national animal, is also an endangered animal. Asiatic elephant, snow leopard, Nilgiri thar, then lion-tailed macaw, and then Kashmiri red stag blackbird and one-horned rhinoceros, Indian variety of rhinoceros, shielded body, right? And the blackbird, everybody knows this, right? This is also endangered, but was killed by Salman Khan. That's why he was punished or prosecuted very seriously, right? So these are endangered. If we don't take care of them, they will get lost. Very quickly, and we will lose them permanently. And recently, in WHO, United Nations Organization, has given a statement that if the same way how now we are using the resources goes in same way for next 10 to 20 years, many of these living beings will be permanently extinct. It should never occur, but people say that it may occur. Next is endangered and endemic species. What does endemic species means? We discussed this topic couple of times in the previous topics. Endangered dams problems due to vegetation, loss of vegetation. Endangered endemic species will be lost and endemic ante which are restricted to grow in a particular geographical region and nowhere else it cannot be seen. It can be seen is called as an endangered species. Nowhere else it can be seen. It cannot be found in any other country except the place where it is found. Like we have simple examples are Australian kangaroos of Australian deserts, penguins, polar bears. Even in India, we have Asiatic lion, right? And a lion-tailed macaw, giant squirrel, flying squirrel, robin bird, blue robin. So we have many such examples, and there is a list like Asiatic lion, Kashmiri stag, lion-tailed macaw, purple frog, Shanghai deer, Nilgiri tar, pygmy hawk, bronzeback, white snake of Western Ghats, Nilgiri blue robin bird, then Malabar civet, Anamalai gliding frog, Namdafa, flying squirrel, Indian giant squirrel, and the bonnet macaw. These are all the endemic species of India, right? Which are specifically found in India and nowhere else in the world we can see these living beings, right? So, what is the importance of these things? Let them be don't available in anywhere of the world and only be in the India and let them get extinct. What is the problem? Say suppose if we get an extinct animal which is available in some part like in India, if one neem tree now is extinct, god forbid, it should never occur, right? Any such tree is permanently lost, we can get the same tree from other part of the world because they have got spread it throughout the world. So, but these endemic species mean they are available only in India. If we lose them permanently, they are lost permanently, and we lose a benefit out of them. Benefit, benefit అంటే ఏం బెనిఫిట్ ఉంటుంది రిసోర్స్ నుంచి న్యాచురల్ రిసోర్సెస్ ఆర్ biodiversity. What benefit we will have? Do we have any benefit? Yes, absolutely. Like you take the early morning, our day starts first with a glass of water, right? Then a glass of tea or a coffee. What is wrong with that? Glass of water, right? How do we get water? How much amount of fresh water is available in the nature? Only less than 1% fresh water is available. 97% saline water is available. How does this 1% fresh water is supplied or satisfiable for all the population in the world? Because that less than 1% is never ending less than 1%. Today it remains less than 1%, tomorrow less than 1%. After 1 year also that less than 1% will remain forever. Since the formation of the earth globe, that less than 1% remains as it is. Why? Because as soon as we take the water, fresh water from the nature, nature adds fresh water as a process of rain, and this rain occurs because one of the reason is plantation, green vegetation. Right. Why do we do Haritaharam? Because people know that once we green plant the trees, green leaves, and the trees are available, it brings down the hydrological cycle, be a part of hydrological cycle, and brings the rain. So because we want rain, we want to grow the greenery. What is greenery? Plants, I mean the biodiversity, right? So that is why we need to grow them. So that is nothing but value of biodiversity. Because we know the value, we need to take care of them, these endemic and endangered species. How we can take care of them? How we can protect these endemic and endangered which are getting decreased in the population? By protecting them by a method called as conservation of biodiversity. What is conservation of biodiversity? Conserving is nothing but protecting and flourishing the population of those living beings who are decreasing in the nature is called as conservation of biodiversity. Conservation of biodiversity occurs because of two reasons. One is ex situ conservation and another one is in situ conservation. Ex situ conservation and conservation of biodiversity out of its natural environment is called as ex situ conservation, like zoological park, botanical gardens, seed bank, gene bank, horticulture, recreational gardens, aquarium. All these are nothing but conservation, ex situ conservation, off-site conservation, conservation out of their natural habitat of a living being is called as off-site or ex situ conservation. In situ conservation means conservation of a living being, right? Inside their natural habitat is known as in situ conservation. This includes the establishment of national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, natural reserves, reserve, protected forests, so on and so forth, right? So these are nothing but in situ conservation, conservation of biodiversity, right? So conservation of living beings inside their natural habitat is called as in situ conservation. Not only this, we have even conservation techniques a part of our syllabus, academic curriculum, like in vitro conservation, in vivo conservation, cryogenics or cryobanks, or lyophilization. What is in vitro conservation? Vitreous means glass. Conservation within a glass is known as in vitro conservation. That is conservation in the laboratory. Do we need to conserve the living beings in the laboratory?
Yes,
Like tissue culture. Yes, absolutely true, my dear. Tissue culture. Only tissue culture example. Can we give any more other examples? I'll give you the best example. You take the vaccine, COVID vaccine. Right. We need to, what is COVID vaccine? Is it a chemical? Yes or no?
yes, sir. Type
No.
of
No,
Plasma.
my dear. No,
Plasma.
no, no. It is not even plasma. It is not the plasma, it is not the chemical, it is nothing but the same virus. COVID virus is given, right? COVID virus containing the plasma will be given. Polio vaccine ante emuntundi, polio virus ఉంటుంది. The virus which is partially killed will serve as a vaccine for that virus itself. Why partially killed? Because they want to make the virus weak and enter into our body. Our body becomes very strong. ఒక ముందల weak opponent ఉంటే naturally the opponent will become very strong, and they will start producing antibodies and antigen reaction, and we can develop good antibodies in the body, right? So that is what called as that is why we need to have a COVID virus also. There should be there in cultivated or isolated colonies of COVID virus should also be there, which can be developed only in the laboratories. All the viruses, all the living beings, we want them to generate medicine or vaccines, right? So that is why we need to cultivate them in the test tubes, petri plates, conical flasks, nutrient broth, agars, right? So that is how we develop in vitro conservation. In vivo conservation means conservation of a living being in another living being is called as in vivo conservation. What does it mean? Does all these viruses, bacteria, plants, tissue culture, everything can be done in the petri plates or test tube in a artificial broth or agar gel medium? No, some living beings live only in the other living being. Out of the other living being, they don't survive. They soon die. So such living beings for the research and R&D, research and development purpose we need to cultivate will be kept alive in the other living beings like lab animals, guinea pig, rabbit, rat, right? All that. That is what called as in vivo conservation. Right. Similarly, lyophilization or cryogenics or cryobanks is nothing but subjecting a living being, either it could be a seed or a living being, to liquid nitrogen or liquid CO2, so that we dry them by freezing, and can be preserved for 5 to 10 years or more than 2 to 3 decades also. That is, nowadays stem cells are being stored by life cell banks or cryogenics అంటుంటారు, right? That is also conservation of biodiversity. So that is how conservation of biodiversity can be done. Now everything is clear. You have any doubts in this topic? No doubts?
No, sir.
Right. I have a small doubt, my dear. We discussed the first in situ conservation and ex situ. Ex situ ante conservation outside their natural habitat. In situ means conservation in their natural habitat. If we can conserve the animal in its natural habitat, in its home, why we need to take it out of its home and put it in the zoological park and conserve? It will be like people are taken from their home to keep them safe in the prison. Is it not? Zoological park means we are keeping the animals in the free prison, and we say we are conserving them. It is not convenient for them or comfort for them. Why do we need to do this? Why can't we do even this naturally?
Because
Any answers?
it's hard to find them in natural environment.
Right, my dear. It's hard to find Kadu. It's hard for those living beings to survive naturally in the nature because of some reason. I told you in the starting, conversion threats to biodiversity law. When the animals are moved from one place to another place, it is called a migration. When it occurs naturally, the migration, animals migrate for the reason of survival, like to have a safety place, to have a safe area, they will survive there. Right? That is what migration is called. When animals are forcibly migrated from one place to another place, human induced migration or exotic species, introduction of exotic species, that is called as, that will lead to this survival instinct. Like when animals are moved by force to some other place, then the survival of the fittest, competition for the survival will arise. they may not survive there and they could die. So that is the reason why we need to take them out of their natural habitat and protect them other place, because naturally they are unable to survive, right? Then that is how we do the conservation of biodiversity. Is these methods of conservation are only there in the paper, or people doing any actions regarding this? Yes, there are international and national efforts being put to conserve the biodiversity. I will explain that. Like we can say this, yeah, international efforts like we say conservation of biodiversity by United Nations Environment Program. This is a program authenticated or organized by United Nations organization to uh, what we say to protect or preserve the natural resources and their contribution to the sustainable development. Not only this, even World Conservation Union, right, which is one of the largest union and important conservation network that brings nearly 83 states and 110 governments, agencies, and more than 800 NGOs, non-government organizations, and more than 10,000 scientists and experts of this in the area of conservation, natural biodiversity conservation, and environmentalist from 181 countries working for conservation of natural resources under this program. Not only this, under the programs which are taken under United Nations organization like World Conservation Monitoring Center, which works under United Nations Environment Program, right, will also involve in conservation activities, and even worldwide fund for nature, WWF, which was earlier called as World Wildlife Fund, right, is the largest fundraising system for the development and conservation of natural resources. And even the people are involved in assessing the natural biodiversity. Global biodiversity assessment, like nearly 13 to 14 million species are available in the nature. Out of that, 1.7 million species have been described or discovered by us. Many of are unknown to us, and before many of them are coming into limelight, they are getting lost. We are losing them before they are being identified, because they are getting extinct at a faster rate. So these are all the efforts. Not only this, even the conservation of biological diversity, then Global Biodiversity Challenge in April 2002. All the countries of the world, nearly 170 to 196 countries, have signed a treaty to protect the biodiversity and conserve, and they have achieved it in from 2002 to 2010. So as a result of achievement, as an inspiration, again in 2015 to 2030, under the sustainable development goal, 17 goals, right, by World Summit Organization of United Nations, COPE organization, they have signed a treaty to take a challenge to conserve biodiversity till 2030, right? And not only this, international, even national efforts like Indian government has taken various biodiversity protection steps, important mentioning. The central government has enacted the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, under which the Wetland Conservation and Management Rule 2010 have been framed for the protection of wetland in the state. The centrally sponsored scheme of National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystem also provides assistance to the states for the management of wetlands under the Wetland Conservation and Management Rule 2010. And not only this, even Wildlife Crime Control Bureau been established for control of illegal trade in wildlife, including endangered species, and punish and prosecute the people who involved in the illegal trade of animal products. And even the integrated development of wildlife habitat program, a centrally sponsored scheme under which program called as recovery of endangered species is been taken and worked, where 16 species, endangered species, have been identified, and the recovery of these species were done, and some of these species have already been recovered successfully by these integrated development of wildlife habitat scheme, centrally sponsored people, right? Not only that, even the central government has empowered powers to the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau and even the Central Bureau of Investigation to increase protected area, nominate or designate some areas as protected areas like national parks, sanctuaries, conservation reserves, and community reserves to protect the natural environment under Wildlife Protection Act 1970. Even not only that, even the financial and technical expertise, knowledge and techniques or assistance is provided for the state government from the centrally sponsored schemes like Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitat Project, Tiger Project, Elephant, to protect and a better protection of and conservation of wildlife. And then the Central Bureau of Investigation (CBI) has been empowered under the Wildlife Protection Act 1970 to apprehend and prosecute wildlife offenders. Like Salman Khan was prosecuted by the CBI people only for killing blackbird, and Bishnois are the people who have sued into the court of law. And even the state governments have been requested to strengthen the field formation and intensify patrolling in and around the protected areas. Right. So this is what the efforts of state and central government or national and international people are being done for the conservation of biodiversity for the survival of humans and other living beings. Are we doing anything in this area? Right. We should also feel, know the social and cultural value of this biodiversity and ethically accept the make the mind accept and make our mind so that we will never harm the biodiversity living beings, and we will protect them from our role. We will do our job as a duty, not only the national and international, even personally, locally we can act which can bring the global changes, right? People say that the actions, small actions locally made can bring the changes throughout the global changes. So same things can happen. So with this we complete the third unit. I will give a small 1 or 30 seconds break, 1 minute or 30 seconds break. If you have any doubts in this, you can raise, or else we can continue this fourth unit. Right? Fourth unit. I will just scroll down once the slides of biodiversity so that you can get an idea about all the topics what we have discussed. If you feel anything missed or any doubts, you please raise. I would like to discuss the topic. Students, are you there? Once tell me yes, Ananda.
Yes, sir.
Right,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
Gotinda. Thank you. Yes, Gotinanda, thank you. Right, so what is biodiversity? Variety and variability levels of biodiversity, species diversity, genetic ecosystem, then biogeographical classification. Then what is importance of biogeographical classification? We can have different ecosystems, so richness of biodiversity, so that hotspots of biodiversity could be there, and throughout the world there are 23 hotspots of biodiversity. Out of that, three are there from India, that is Eastern Ghats, Western Ghats, and Indo and Myanmar border. Then value of biodiversity, that is consumptive use values, protective use values, benefits from the biodiversity, social and cultural values, aesthetic values, ethical values, and optional values. Then threats to biodiversity, there is decrease in the population of biodiversity, and these are the points which causes human reasons for the decrease of population of biodiversity. Then endangered and endemic species. Endangered means the species which is at the risk of extinction, and the endangered endemic means which are found only in our country are endangered species, and this is the list. And then the conservation of biodiversity, ex situ conservation, in situ conservation, lyophilization, in vivo, in vitro conservation, then international efforts to conservation like United Nations Environment Program, World Conservation Union, World Conservation Monitoring Center, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, Global Biodiversity Assessment, then Technical and Convention on Biological Diversity, Global Biodiversity Challenge, then national efforts like Establishment of Wildlife Protection and Control of Wildlife Act 1972, then Wetland Conservation and Management Rule 2010, then National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystem, then Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, Integrated Development of Habitat, in which recovery of endangered species will work and protected areas have been done by the law of Wildlife Protection Act 1972, then financial and technical assistance to state and central government is provided for enhancing the conservation of natural resources and sustainable development. Then Central Bureau of Investigation has been empowered with the powers to prosecute the people who mislead with or ill-treat the biological systems and do illegal trading of biological systems. Then state governments have been empowered. Right. So this is the third unit we have done. Fourth unit is environmental pollution. So what is pollution first of all?
Increase of toxic material in nature.
Right. Presence of toxic materials into anything like air or a water, what we drink or what we breathe is called as a pollution. Presence of toxic materials. What does toxic material means? What is other word synonym antonym of this? Synonyms ఏంటి antonyms ఏంటి? Toxic means synonyms I will give you. You give me one word. Toxic అంటే ఏంటి నాన్న? Poisonous, synonym, poison, hazardous, harmful, adverse, effect, right? Adversely affecting chemical, substance which are not good for the health. All these are nothing but synonyms of toxic. Then what is antonym? Non-toxic. What is the difference between toxic and non-toxic? Toxic means poisonous. If you take it in any way, it will harm. Right? Non-poisonous means it may be a good thing for the health or may not be, but it is not a poison. It is not harmful. It may do good or it may remain silent, but it will never harm. That is non-poisonous. Right? Is there anything which may do good or may retain non-effective? Nothing like that, right? If you take, I will give you example, my dear. Right. So now I will have one logical example. Say water is needed for us, right? Oxygen is needed for us, right? It is 550 liters per day per head we breathe in oxygen, right? We get 20% of the atmosphere consists of oxygen, and we take nearly 15% and 5% out of the air what we breathe in will be absorbed. Oxygen is absorbed, right? This is what we need. What happens if we take pure quality of oxygen? Pure oxygen continuously breathing. Is it good or a bad?
It's good to know.
No, no, no. Pure oxygen permanently is not good, my dear. Pure oxygen causes intoxication. Right. I'll give you one more example. Say suppose current present situation example తీసుకుందాం. Right? Practical example. COVID vaccine. Right? I feel that I hope you all have taken the first dose or some people have taken both the doses. How much amount of COVID vaccine is being given to us? Nearly 2 to 3 ml, right? 2 to 3 ml of the vaccine will be given in a syringe. If we take 10 to 15 or 20 or 100 ml of the vaccine, we will become very stone boy, right? We will become solid, strong. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, it is.
No, my dear. Okay, I will
Oh,
give you one more example. Say, suppose if somebody is suffering with fever and the doctor suggests P252 or P500, that is paracetamol 500 mg, but he takes nearly 5 tablets, 2500 mg. Is it good or a bad?
it overdoses.
Overdose. What it causes?
cause toxicity
Overdose on
material.
he become faint, or there won't be any signals passed to the brain, right? He become unconscious, he cannot feel anything, or if he is a weak person, weak-hearted person, he may even die due to cardiac arrest. Is it true or false? It may occur or not. Yes or no?
Yes, so it may like harmful to.
Right, it is harmful. So what is that? The main what is required, if we are not taking it into that concentration, it is harmful. You know, proteins are needed for those people who work out more. We need proteins to develop the body growth. Yes or no? What will happen if you take more excess amount of protein into the body? The ligaments will break, the tissue will start breaking, right? Tissue, some places tissue dissolution will occur, right? Excess of protein is also not good for the health of the person, right? Ligament and tendons will get affected badly because of excess protein present in the body. So what does it mean? Even if you take medicine in the more than required quantity, not good. Even if you take vaccine in the more than required quantity, not good. Even if you take vitamins, proteins more than the required quantity, not good. Even if you eat sweet more than the required quantity, not good. Even if you eat salt more than the required quantity, not good. Even if you drink water, my dear, 3 to 5 liters per day is enough. People say is good for the health of a person. Water consumption 3 to 5 liters. But if somebody consumes 25 liters of water per day, what will happen? He will fall sick, right? So, what is it? It is not harming. Yes. Is it only poison which will harm the humans, not the good material harm? Yes, even the good thing will harm the humans. Even the protein, even the medicine, even the vaccine, even the water, even the oxygen. Whatever we take more than the required quantity is good for nothing, right? అందుకే సింపుల్గా అనలేదు. Proverbs, what ancestors have said, anything more than the requirement is not good for health, is absolutely true, my dear. So now can you define pollution? Right, what is pollution? Toxic material అన్నాము. Toxic material అంటే ష్యూర్గా పొల్యూషన్. But non-toxic, is it good if you take them it in more concentrations, more quantities? That is
No.
also not good. So what is pollution? Pollution not only mean a toxic, poisonous, hazardous. It mean any material, any substance, any compound, if it is present more than the required quantity in the environment, and that more quantity is adversely affecting, badly affecting the physical well-being of living beings and their environment, then it is called as pollution. And that component, that substance whose presence is causing this pollution is called as a pollutant. And if this substance present in the air, we say air pollution has occurred. If it present in the water, water pollution. Soil pollution. Noise pollution. Thermal pollution. Nuclear pollution. So on and so forth. That is environmental pollution. Now we will come to air pollution. What is air pollution? Same definition. Any substance or a compound or a material present in the air more than the required quantity and is harmful or poisonous to the physical well-being of living beings and their environment, then that substance is called as air pollutant, and it is causing air pollution. And air pollution can be occurred because of three types of air pollutants materials, which can be in the solid form or gaseous form or liquid. Solid form though, we call them as a particulate matter, like ash, dust, soot. All these are nothing but particulate matter. Gases like CO2, carbon monoxide, oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, then carbon monoxide, all these, methane, right? Ozone, radon, all these are nothing but the different types of gases whose excess quantity can harm. CO2, we call it is a pollutant. Yes or no, my dear?
Yes, sir.
Right. CO2 is not there in the environment. No, it is there.
Yes, sir.
0.3%. It is naturally there. మరి మనం ఆ CO2 కూడా పొల్యూటెంట్ ఎందుకు అంటున్నారు?
because it is in excess.
Right, it is in excess. Naturally, it is present in very less concentration, but now its concentration has increased from 3 to 4%, right? 0.4%, almost nearly 400 ppm is the concentration of CO2 in the air. That is why we are calling it a pollutant. Normally, CO2 isn't a pollutant. No, it is good for the plants. Plants grow with them with that CO2, and then only we can get the food. But if more CO2 plants, not only for the plant growth, even it is causing global warming, then we call it as a pollutant. So CO2 is a natural component, but it is more concentration causing pollution. Well, similarly, liquid air pollutants like liquid water droplets or a pesticide spray or a deodorant spray or a body spray or pharmaceutical, that is pesticides, or even sanitizer, sanitation spray, alcohols, or even the paint spray, right? All that. And when we even sneeze and cough, the sputum with the virus and bacteria from infected person comes out. That is also a liquid droplet, which is nothing but liquid air pollutant. Then the solid air pollutants particulate matter is again categorized into two. One is suspended particulate matter, another one is respirable suspended particulate matter. Suspended particulate matter means the particles whose size is more than 10 microns, which can be seen on the desktop in our houses whenever we touch any material which is not dusted for longer time. We touch, we can see the dust on our hand. That is nothing but the suspended particulate matter having size more than 10 microns, right? Which is not good. And the particles whose size is less than 10 microns, which are called as respirable suspended particulate matter, right? Whose size is less than 10 microns, and they are called as respirable. Why they are called respirable? Because their size is less than 10 microns and they can go through the nostril. మన nose lo there are bristles of hair coming from all directions of the nose nostril and enter into the center and makes as a filter mesh, which will not allow the dust particles to go into the respiratory tract, and they clog and stop them in the nose, and through a sneezing mechanism they will be thrown out of the nose. But these respirable suspended particulate matter can go deep into these nostrils, into the lungs and even the blood streams, and can enter into the body and can cause abnormalities in the body. That is why we call them as respirable suspended particulate matter and very dangerous, adverse to the body. Then these sources can come from the natural sources and anthropogenic air pollution sources. Naturally, does nature pollute the air? Yes or no? Yes, my
No.
dear. Like yes, right. Like example, volcanic eruptions, pollen grains, bacterial spores, fungus, virus, which is there in the air, the bad smell coming out of the natural decaying of waste material, methane gases, sulfur dioxide gases from the putrefying smell coming from the wastewater naturally. All that are nothing but natural air pollutants. Anthropogenic sources and vehicular emissions, right? Then industrial emissions, factories, then degradation, the transportation sector, then burning of the fossil fuels, burning of the waste material, burning of the plastic material, throwing the plastic into the nature, land, society, environment, right? All these are nothing but anthropogenic sources of air pollution. Then these sources can be categorized into point sources, area sources, or mobile sources. What are point sources? Point sources of air pollution are the sources which can be identified as a one point. From one place these sources are being generated. That is what called as point sources of air pollution, like the chimneys, stacks or chimneys of industry, from where we can see that this is the place from where the air is getting polluted, and we can locate and identify, that is called as an area source, and sorry, point source. Then area source means an industrial area or a residential area or a big volcanic eruption area where the environment is getting polluted is called area source. Then mobile source means vehicles which run on a particular track of the road, continuously emitting pollutants on the track or railway track, right? All these are called as uh, mobile sources of air pollution, right? And these pollutants can be categorized primarily into two groups, that is primary air pollutants and secondary air pollutants. Primary air pollutants ante which are released directly into the environment and cause pollution like particulates, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen and sulfur coming out of the power plants, coal-fired power plants, vehicles, natural gas power plants, biomass burning, natural forest fires, volcanoes, and many more. All these, right, are called as primary air pollutants, right? And then secondary air pollutants are pollutants which form uh, pollutants after entering into the environment and reacting. The primary pollutants which enter into the environment and they react among themselves and form another pollutant which can be called as a secondary pollutant, or primary pollutants which react with the natural environmental components and form the third level of pollutants which are called as secondary air pollutants, right? Secondary air pollutants. So these are primary and secondary air pollutants. Like I can explain it here, the SOx and NOx which are released from natural and human, this vehicular or industrial emission are primary pollutants at the starting only, NOx and SOx, right? Volatile organic compounds and particulate matter. But these NOx and SOx, when combined with the water vapor in the air, they form H2SO4 and HNO3, nitric acid and sulfuric acid, and forms acid rains, which are nothing but secondary pollutants. Like even the volatile organic compounds form peroxyacyl nitrates, and even the ground level ozone, which is formed at the ground, will also called as a secondary pollutant, and even smog, which forms from that fog and smoke is also a secondary pollutant, right? And the major sources of air pollution by the humans are burning of fossil fuels, natural and human-made, industrial emissions, indoor air pollutant, wildlife fires, microbial decaying process, transportation, open burning of garbage waste, construction and demolition, agricultural waste, use of chemical and synthetic products. Then top 10 kinds of air pollutants are sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compound, particulate matter, ozone, chlorofluorocarbon, unburned hydrocarbons, lead and heavy metals. Right. So these are the pollutants which are there in the environment which can cause pollution effects like global warming, climate change, acid rain, ozone layer depletion, smog effect, extinction of animals, respiratory health problems, deterioration in the building material, effect of air pollution, deterioration of the buildings and building material. These are all the effects of air pollutants and the effects on humans. According to WHO, World Health Organization, six major pollutants have been identified which can cause a major damage to the health of the humans, like ground level ozone, carbon monoxide, oxides of sulfur and nitrogen, and lead. Right, these are more devastating or danger. Right, so I will discuss only four or three out of them, like carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas. We cannot feel its presence, we cannot see its accumulation in the environment in the area where we are living, and it gets accumulated and it will cause effect like suffocation, and people may die because of this. Right? What it will cause is suffocation. Why it causes suffocation? Right? If other side of the suffocation is good health, when do we feel good comfort, respiratory comfort? When we take good amount of oxygen into the air, breathe, right? When we take oxygen, we feel comfort. Why? Because oxygen will be absorbed by the blood and will be carried to various parts of the body when the muscle start working because they get energy by glycolysis in the presence of oxygen. Right? What happens if there is no oxygen to that part of the body, or a blood doesn't carry oxygen? The total body doesn't contain oxygen, and it leads to a problem. Why the body will not contain oxygen? Now, when who takes this oxygen? Hemoglobin. And when we inhale carbon monoxide along with oxygen, the hemoglobin has got 200 times more affinity towards carbon monoxide, and it will go adhere and makes a complex called as carboxyhemoglobin. And these carboxyhemoglobin will be carried to various parts of the body instead of oxygen. And when oxygen is not there, right, when oxygen is not there, right, what happens? The body glycolysis will not occur, and all the parts of the body will strain, and the lactic acid production will occur, and the body will muscles will start straining or pain, right? So that is what called as anoxia. Absence of oxygen in the body will cause anoxia and a pain. This occurs because blood is not taking oxygen, instead it is taking CO2 because of a formation of a complex carboxyhemoglobin. And people feel suffocated because lack of oxygen, and they can die due to this, right? Or sometimes mild effect will be like headache, dizziness, vomiting, nausea, and major effects may be death due to unconscious or suffocation. And even the sulfur oxides and oxides of nitrogen, when come in contact with the ice, because these are the gases, when come in contact with the water vapor, they form acid. And the same thing occurs, they form acid on the skin, mucous membrane, eyes, nose, throat, and lungs, and causes irritation, itching. And while traveling through the respiratory tract, it can harm the mucous membrane of the respiratory tract and causes inflammation and inflammation, right? And the swelling of the respiratory tract, and even that can also cause suffocation and death of a person. And that is what occurs because of oxides of sulfur. Even oxides of nitrogen can cause irritation, headache, chronically reduce the lung function because the acid enters into the lungs and not loss of appetite, then corrodes the teeth, right? This is what occurs. And the lead poisoning, when we inhale lead, simple question I will ask you. Whenever some people, like when they enter into these petrol bunks or car or a bus, they feel nausea, vomiting sensation, or a headache. When they got stuck in the traffic jam, then also they feel the same thing. When they enter into a newly painted house, they also feel the same thing. Why is that? What is the reason for that? It is because the mild entry of lead into the body will cause that problem, like headache, nausea, vomiting sensation, because it directly affects the central nervous system. And more concentration can even cause abnormality in the central nervous system, and the people may become mentally retarded and may even die due to cardiac arrest, increased blood pressure, and insomnia due to lead poisoning or lead pollution. Not only that, my dear, even lead is more dangerous. Why? Because when lead is inhaled by a person, a pregnant woman, it can even travel through the placental barrier from mother to the child, and it can cause mentally retardation or a nervous system a improper development or damage to the nervous system of the child, and child may become mentally retarded and die. So this is what occurs because of air pollutants. Then effects of air pollutants on plants and materials, we will discuss this in the next class, because I told you people I will take a class from 3:10 to 4:10. Again on Thursday, same 3 to 4 we have a class, right? Combined class, I will take them. Till then, if you have any doubts, you can raise, or else I will take attendance. This is 10th, 821, mechanical B and ECE